Welcome to Poland Daily Culture.
I'm Paulina Otterstein.
And I'm John Carter.
And today we're in Opatów in a beautiful Gothic castle.
And in today's episode, Paula's going to be speaking to an expert at Opatów Castle. I'm going to be taking you around the museum to see the sights and around the garden and the surrounding area. So join us as we take you on a little adventure around this historic place.
Jesteśmy w zbrojowni zamkowej, w sali, w której prezentujemy broń ochronną, broń zaczepną. Stoimy przy wspaniałej zbroi XVI-wiecznej, późno-średniowiecznej.
We are in the castle armory, where we have armors and defensive and offensive weapons. Here is a wonderful 16th century armor, a late medieval piece. It protected maybe not a knight, but a heavy soldier, a cuirassier, a heavy cavalry rider. This type of soldier was almost unbeatable. They either all died or won, and they usually come out on top. They brought fear in the enemy's hearts in the whole of Europe at the time. Next to the armor is a sword, a very heavy sword, but it wouldn't be a set with the armor as it weighs around 5 kilograms, which makes it either a ceremonial or an executioner's weapon. It was possibly used to perform death sentences. In battle, soldiers used swords that weighed around 1 kilogram or 1.2 kilograms, so no heavier than a saber or a later rapier. The weapon that came after swords was an épée. Here we have some examples of French épées, truly beautiful exhibits. Here is a French épée with a so-called colichemar pommel, which made it possible to block opponent's strikes due to its widening next to the handle. It also had a very sharp, very small tip, characteristic for this type of weapon. It was created for duels, for killing. It is said to be the second most deadly tool invented by humans, of course right after firearms. With this, a tiny woman could defeat even the biggest man with a few clean and fast pricks, a weapon which later found itself in a saying szermierka słowna, or fencing on words. Quick riposts, pricks, attacks, it all came from this type of weapon. Here are some military épées, but there is also an épée which the French say was used by the Polish scytheman units, by their officers. It is quite interesting, and I think historians will have a lot to say on this matter. There is a beautiful courtyard épée from the beginning of the 19th century, and an épée which was modified due to the events of the beginning of the 19th century in France. It has a covered engraving which used to glorify Napoleon Bonaparte and a crest of the House of Bourbon. Something must have happened that the officer who used this épée served both under Napoleon, and after his fall in 1815 he went on to serve the Bourbons.
W 1815 roku. Mamy również XVIII-wieczny przykład pancerza i hełmu husarskiego.
Here in the opposite corner of our armory, there is also an example of the 18th century hussar armor and helmet. There are only wings missing. There are many theories on why the hussars wore wings on their armor. Our piece of armor is the more interesting since we know who it belonged to Józef Głębocki. Here in the middle part, on the so-called foga, there is an inscription telling us who owned it. In 1725, Głębocki became the standard-bearer of a hussar unit. However, at that time, even though the hussars were famous, for example for their charge under Vienna in 1683, which helped win the battle against the Turks, they were mainly used in ceremonial events, as this type of unit became too impractical. In 1765, it was replaced by the National Cavalry, which formed its own legend at the end of the Second Republic of Poland and in the Napoleon era.
Urosła u schyłku Rzeczpospolitej i w epoce wojen napoleońskich. Niezwykle ciekawą, tutaj na pierwszym miejscu jest szabla konstytucyjna, Ta nazwa pochodzi od tego, że król Stanisław August Poniatowski po uchwaleniu konstytucji dnia 3 maja 1791 roku, pierwszej konstytucji demokratycznej w Europie.
In our collection, we also have other very interesting melee weapons. Here is the constitutional saber, which has its name from the fact that after King Stanisław Augustus approved the first ever European constitution on May 3rd, 1791, he gave a few hundred saber blades as gifts to these noblemen who supported the constitution. Every one of them later gave the blades the handles they wanted, and we have one of the sabers out of the few that remained to this day. This saber has the inscription Constitution May 3rd, 1791, and on the other, Long live freedom and Poland. The saber was hidden behind the wall of one of the nearby estates, which was turned into a school after the Second World War. During some repairs it was found along with a Russian saber from 1855, so we can presume that it was hidden there in fear of confiscation by the Russian authorities after the fall of the January uprising in 1864. For the same reason, in the Oporów Castle there were these dual pistols hidden. They were made by the French company Gaston René from 1850. They are wonderfully preserved. They were hidden at the attic of the old cloakroom. There are 2 cap pistols and a revolver for the second. Well, the Rossetti family must have felt great pride since they bought such a set. We sadly don't know the story behind those guns. Maybe they were used during the January uprising, but we don't know. They are fantastically preserved though. There is still some oil in the set to be used to clean them. Here there is the Polish saber, Karabela, especially loved by Poles.
Kaukaska typu szaszka, ulubiona broń Rosjan z kolei, nie posiadająca tej poprzeczki nazywanej jelcem, ale jednocześnie cechą charakterystyczną było to, że wisiała ona przy boku zupełnie odwrotnie niż szabla przy polskim boku. Polacy trzymali tą szablę łukiem na dół, a
in the middle, in the back, there is a Caucasus saber, the Shashka type, loved by the Russians. It didn't have a dais and was worn on the other side than the Polish one. Poles would keep their sabers with the curve facing down, and the Russians kept them facing up, which made it easier to take out, also from behind the back if it was used on a horseback. It was supposedly a very dangerous weapon in the Russian hands. There is a Muslim description on it which asks for prayer in case its owner died. Completely in the back there is a Japanese sword, a katana. It was created in the Nagashima Yoshigatsu workshop in the Hitachi district. Maybe the process of its creation wasn't the most impressive at the time it was made, but the workshop was closed in 1868, which may be connected to the fact the emperor forbid the samurai from carrying weapons and disbanded the samurai entirely after a series of military reforms, as it was portrayed in the movie The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. A lot of Polish children and teenagers get excited when they see that weapon here. Also, some Japanese tourists smile when they see how much attention it gathers. Above the weapons, we have the extremely valuable ivory wares from the 19th century France. From the left, there is a mug and a horn. There are really valuable antiques, especially since the elephants are now protected.
Wyroby o naprawdę dużej wartości antykwarycznej, które już z racji ochrony zwierząt nie będą produkowane właśnie z tego materiału.
Thank you very much for joining us here at Poland Daily Culture from Oporów Castle. I'm John Carter.
I'm Paulina Otterstein, and don't forget to watch us again and subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Poland Daily Live. See you soon.